Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Create and Consume, a podcast about what we make, watch, and buy in the era of digital content. I'm your host, Austen Tosone. I have been thinking a lot about my word of the year lately. If you set a word at the beginning of the year, that you kind of try to integrate throughout each month if possible. So the word I chose for 2025 is enjoy. And I was just thinking about ideas for the episode this week. And one thing that I love that other podcasts will do occasionally is play games, do rankings, create brackets, answer questions. So I thought it would be fun to basically play a game of Would You Rather today. And instead of just looking up, like, would you rather sweet or salty kind of generic questions that I'm sure I could find online, I actually asked ChatGPT to create some tailored to me questions based on what it knows about me. And it low-key came through. I went in and adjusted a small handful of them, and I did get a request for a question answered from book club last night. So other than that, they were all from ChatGPT, and I'm really excited to answer these questions with you today. And of course, if you have a strong opinion or reaction to any of these, I will need to be hearing from you. So definitely reach out, especially if you disagree, because I can't wait to hear what everyone thinks about these questions. But before we get into the game, let's do a little create and consume, of course, as we always do. As far as what I've been creating this week, I have been on a pretty good roll with publishing my weekly blog posts, which I'm really proud of. And this week, I decided to write out a blog post for what to wear to a winter wedding. Some of my wedding blog posts have gotten a good amount of traction and are starting to rank on Google. And then I also have a post that was bringing in a bunch of traffic that was how to dress warmly for a New York City winter. So I was kind of looking at both of those and was trying to think if there was a way to combine them together. And that led to me creating this blog post. So in the post, I share a bunch of different outfit ideas. I talk about some of the main silhouettes that I would look for if I were attending a winter wedding as a wedding guest. And actually, almost this time last year, last April, Andrew and I did actually attend a snowy wedding in Boulder, Colorado for our friends Joe and Emmy. It was kind of magical. It literally did flurry during the ceremony. And of course, I was glad that I went into it knowing it was either going to be like 20 and snowing, which it was, or 70 and sunny, because that's just Colorado for you. So we had a really great time, and I did include that photo in the blog post. I will link it in the show notes. They were such good sports about getting dumped on by snow the day of their wedding, the same way that I pretend to be a good sport about the fact that we had record breaking floods in New York City on our wedding day. And yeah, so this blog post is now live, and I would love for you to go check it out, especially if you are attending any cold weather weddings. I know what you're thinking. I really should have published this like in November. That would have made more sense, but maybe by this time next year, it'll be ranking on Google. And then as far as what I'm consuming this week, I have a physical thing that I'm consuming, aka eating, and that is some homemade sourdough. And my God, I don't know if I can ever go back to the days before I had fresh baked sourdough just readily available sitting on my countertop. So I think what happened was this girl, Shayna, who her handle on Instagram is at Shay Dough. I will also link her in the show notes in case you are in Hoboken and in need of delicious sourdough bread, which I recommend. She, I think, might have seen the Hive repost me because the Hive sent me their March flavor of cinnamon roll, which, like, by the way, that is peak PR for me personally. Like, don't get me wrong, please keep the beauty products coming, but getting to taste the Hive cinnamon roll flavor before anyone else did, I mean, I've never felt better than everyone else in my life like that. And I think because the Hive reposted my video, I think that's how she found me. So she reached out and asked if she could give me a loaf of sourdough. And I was like, oh my God, of course. So I just picked it up from her yesterday. It is crazy to me that I have a neighbor who just like does this. And now that I'm armed with this information, who knows what I'll do with it? I could become addicted to sourdough, which I guess isn't the worst thing to be addicted to, but she was really sweet. And I posted some Instagram stories and a TikTok of me tasting the bread. So I can also link that video if you want to see my real time reaction. But yeah, so shout out to Shayna. And again, she does take orders and she has a whole menu of stuff. So I just got a plain loaf to start out, but she does have an olive loaf and everything loaf. I mean, the options are possibly endless. And I'm really grateful that she thought of me. So, with that being said, let's get into the game already. I'm actually so excited for this. And what happened was ChatGPT also kind of like broke this out into four different categories of questions. So there are kind of several different topics within these like umbrella categories. So the first category is content creation. And the first would you rather is, would you rather always have the perfect lighting for filming or never have to edit your content again? And by the way, I did not prep answers to any of these. I think I might have had like an initial thought, but we're going to be thinking these through in real time. So would I rather have perfect lighting or never have to edit again? I have questions about the never having to edit again. Like, how is that possible? Has AI evolved to the point where it can just read my mind and knows exactly all of the editing decisions that I would make and just like does that for me? Am I hiring out like a contractor to edit? And what if I want to edit something? What if I want to like still have that, control over my content and how it looks? This is, can you tell, my fear of outsourcing and why I have not yet hired a virtual assistant to help me with the podcast. But I don't know. I always said for the podcast that I would probably end up doing the first year at least on my own, but we are coming up on the 1 year anniversary of this show. So that is exciting and might cause me to reevaluate. But that's not what this question is about. I guess in my head, I want to say never have to edit again, only because that is a big amount of time that usually goes into actually going in and editing each piece of content. For something like the podcast, it would be amazing if it could sense like where there are pauses in the conversation where I say and even just get me a rough cut, even though I guess Riverside AI producer kind of already does that. What it would really need to know is where to go in, and if I have to say something more than once, knowing which take to use, or if I like stop mid sentence, understanding that I probably don't actually want that portion in the podcast and removing it. So in theory, I would love to never have to edit again, but given that I don't know the parameters of what that would really look like, I think I would also love to just have the perfect lighting, because I do think lighting makes a big difference in content. And one struggle that I've had, at least in this apartment since we've lived here, is our previous apartment had south facing windows, which was amazing. And in this apartment, we have west facing windows, which is good. We do get some light in the afternoon. But even if you're watching this episode on YouTube right now, this is not my ideal lighting, because you might be able to tell all of the light is coming from the left and there's no window to my right. In an ideal world, I would love to be facing a window and have better lighting and all those things. So I think I'm going to pick perfect lighting for filming, just because if that means anywhere I go, then I also don't have to worry if I'm like out at an event in the evening. Yeah, that could be kind of a game changer. So in my, did I pick an answer to this one? I guess I'm going to go with perfect lighting. Okay. I hate this question. This is ChatGPT, like, it really went there. Would you rather be able to only create YouTube videos or only be able to podcast? And this is a mean question for me personally, because I genuinely love both so much. I would say at this point, I would have to pick YouTube, just because I feel like I do put the podcast on YouTube. It technically is a video at that point too. And if you guys had to go to YouTube to listen to the audio, that wouldn't be the end of the world, I guess. But I just can't imagine not doing YouTube, because I've done YouTube for 7 years at this point, and I've only done podcasting for 11 months. So I would have to choose YouTube. And it doesn't mean I don't love the podcast. It just means that I have an impossible decision to make from this question, which I guess is the point. Because with YouTube, there's just so much flexibility. Like, I could just do a video where I sit and talk that does feel podcast-esque, but I can't really replicate a vlog in podcast form. So I'm going to pick YouTube. Would you rather have a viral moment that fades quickly or steady long-term growth? I think we all know the answer to this one. I would definitely rather have steady long-term growth, which I believe is what I have right now, but it is definitely interesting to see the power of viral moments and how they can change and shape all of the different creators who experience them. For some people, it can be a viral moment that they capitalize on, but in this case, the viral moment, it says it's going to fade quickly. So I definitely want to latch myself onto the steady long-term growth goal. Here's a good question. Would you rather collab with your dream brand for one big campaign or have a long-term partnership with a smaller brand that you love? Now, this is interesting because I'm trying to think, like, what are my dream brands? I mean, in some ways, I'm also lucky because I have worked with a lot of my dream brands. at this point, if I were to like name a couple right now, I feel like Rare Beauty would be a dream brand for me. Canva would be a dream brand for me. Notion, Stanley, Laneige. I could definitely think of some dream brands right off the top of my head. YouTube is a dream brand, although I have worked with them already, which is crazy to say. I feel like Apple would also be a dream brand. So let me think about that. So let's say I'm partnering with Apple. I've been an Apple user, obviously, since 2012 with my laptop and my phone and everything. When I think about one big campaign, the most recent example I'm thinking of is like the Poppy Super Bowl ad that featured influencers. So I am not a Poppy drinker, nor do I need a giant Poppy vending machine if you are up to date on all of their latest tea. But let me think about that for a minute. I am in an Apple commercial in the Super Bowl. That to me is maybe like the one big campaign in my head, like just to put it out there and think as big as it could possibly be. Or would I rather have a long term partnership with a smaller brand you love? Now, smaller brand, I guess, in theory, would just have to be a brand smaller than Apple, right? So let's say in my head, that's actually Rare Beauty. I rather just like be in the Apple commercial, one big campaign, or would I rather post maybe like every other month for an entire year with Rare? I think that a big campaign like that would definitely be a bucket list kind of goal and item for me. I think that having a long-term partnership with a smaller brand is something that I'm working towards more actively already having in my day-to-day. So even though that is something that I currently strive for and that I would want to do for the long term, I do feel like having one big campaign like that, I feel like you just never know where something like that could take you. And I feel like that would feel like it came with a lot more credibility than the other question about would you rather just have a viral moment that fades quickly? Because at the end of the day, I could still walk away saying, like, oh, fun fact about me, I've been in a Super Bowl commercial, or, just to have that kind of exposure with a big brand like that. I think I would maybe say that just because I would hope that like long term partnerships with smaller brands I love are a big part of my future going forward and will be something that I experience no matter what. Would you rather never be able to use Pinterest again or never be able to use Instagram again? Now, this is also mean. This is mean. Let's just be honest here because both are very important to me for totally different reasons. Obviously, on Pinterest, there is something to be said for driving traffic to my blog, for creating boards, for having secret boards and using it as a point of inspiration. I would have a really hard time figuring out how to do my vision board that I do at the start of each year without being able to access Pinterest. I have no idea how I would have planned a wedding without Pinterest. It's something that I would not intentionally ever want to let go of, but to not be able to use Instagram again would severely cut into my relationship with my community because of the capabilities with comments and DMs on Instagram. It feels a lot more like a community hub. And I also worry it would cut into my earning potential because while I have done some Pinterest campaigns, I've certainly done way more for Instagram. I think at the end of the day, I would need to keep Instagram over Pinterest, which feels like a betrayal of some kind. But for Instagram, I could still save inspiration images. We do have the save feature on Instagram where you do, in theory, have the ability to put things like, I think, in different folders, which could sort of mimic Pinterest boards. But I don't know. I think also the capability of Pinterest on desktop is something that I really like. So to kind of lose that and be forced into just mobile only nonsense on Instagram is not my favorite. So, but I'm going to pick Instagram because I wouldn't want to lose access to talking with my community. And also, I could use SEO and Google to drive traffic to my blog, which is mainly what I do now anyway. Okay, those were all the content creation questions. Let's move on to another category. This one's called lifestyle and fun. And I did not name these. Let's start out with this question. Would you rather have an unlimited budget to decorate your home exactly how you want or an unlimited shopping spree for your wardrobe? I mean, if I had to choose right now, I would choose shopping spree for my wardrobe just because as you guys heard in the episode, what would that have been, 2 weeks ago from this one, where I talked about discovering my personal style and how I got out of my style rut. I feel like I have a really clear list of exactly what I want right now from my closet. There are just certain things that are like not within the budget currently. So the unlimited shopping spree could be a chance to really just like finalize and capture and create my dream wardrobe altogether. However, and the reason I wouldn't pick unlimited budget to decorate your home, which I do think is kind of the superior choice here, is just because right now we don't know where we're going to be living by the end of this year yet. So if I were already in a new space, I would definitely choose that because, listen, treating myself to certain clothing items and things like that can be fun, but couches are expensive, beds are expensive, contract labor to do quote what exactly how I would want it, as this question asks, would be expensive. It's that in this economy, it's like a no brainer. I feel like I would do the unlimited budget to decorate my home exactly how I would want. And, I have a whole lifetime to develop my wardrobe, but that would be kind of insane. Okay, this is an interesting one. Would you rather live in New York City forever or move every 5 years to a new city? Now, I have actually thought a lot about this because even when Andrew and I were initially talking about moving to Hoboken, I was open to the idea of moving to Hoboken, but since I grew up in the suburbs and, I liked where I grew up, obviously, but in terms of my adult life and everything, I love being somewhere walkable. I love being somewhere where it feels like there's a community. I love exploring new cities. I almost feel like it could have been fun at a certain point in my life. I don't think like right now, but to move to a totally different city. And I mean, this doesn't have any limitations, this question. It just says move every 5 years to a new city. So in my head, I'm like, well, that could be Sydney, that could be Florence, that could be just so many different places. I mean, the options are kind of limitless there. I think that would be a really unique way to grow up, but I think realistically, I probably would choose to live in New York City forever just because I love New York so much. It really is the place that I feel most comfortable, most confident, most myself. There's everything you could ever want there. We are also so lucky, like both in New York City and Hoboken, to be so close to three major airports that makes travel so easy and accessible. I could absolutely see myself living in a city forever. And obviously, New York, it's like a no brainer. For me, it's a true no brainer. I could easily see myself living in New York City forever. And as someone who loves to travel, I would just continue to make sure that I could travel as much as I could. Okay, speaking of travel, now this next question is going to be hard. And I think it's pulling this because I had asked it to help consolidate some insights for a post that I did for my blog about small towns in the US. So the question is, would you rather never be able to travel internationally again or never be able to go on road trips in the US again? And from a practical standpoint, this is actually a hard question because my gut is to say, I would rather never be able to do a road trip in the US again. Like, I don't think I could give up international travel for the rest of my life. But what do I do about like visiting family and my actual life? Because in theory, I take road trips every couple of months, up to like Connecticut and Rhode Island, where my brother and sister in law are. Like, what qualifies as a road trip? Does that have to include me like driving within 5 hours? I don't know. So, since I wasn't given any rules here, I feel like a road trip could be seen as a bigger trip than that. Plus, it doesn't say I can't fly within the US. So, to skirt around the question, I do think I would give up going on road trips in the US. I mean, yeah, I think I would give up road trips because I don't mind a drive, especially, if Andrew's the one driving and I'm the passenger princess, but I really don't see myself giving up international travel. So, sorry to everyone who's impacted by that. I guess you'll just have to come drive to me because in this made up world, I can't go on a road trip. This is where I wish you guys could talk back to me though, because I would want to ask, like, well, what do you think that means in terms of hours spent driving or distance? So, interested to keep going on this. Here is another no brainer question. Would you rather reread your favorite book over and over or never be able to reread a book, only new ones? I would absolutely pick never be able to reread a book, only new ones, because books and TV are very, very different for me. With TV shows, I am extremely likely to watch something that I have already watched before. I am a huge rewatcher. There's something extremely comfortable about it to me. Whereas with books, though, like my favorite book is The Year of Magical Thinking by Joan Didion, and I have not read that in forever. And it's also a really sad book. So if I were to choose to just be able to reread that all the time, I don't know the impact that would have on me mentally, even though it's a beautifully written book. That's obviously why I love it. You just have to go into it prepared to be very sad because it's about the death of her husband, essentially. So even though that's my favorite book, I love being able to read new books. So I would absolutely give up the capability to reread a book in exchange for the ability to constantly read new books. Because again, for TV, I feel like the answer would be almost the opposite, but we're talking about books here. Would you rather only drink coffee for the rest of your life or only drink matcha? Again, I do love my matcha, but that is a newer addition to my rotation of beverages. I can't imagine my life without coffee. I can't, especially just because coffee is so much more readily available, I feel like, than matcha. Coffee is a lot easier to make for the most part. Like, it's kind of hard to screw up, just like a black coffee. And I feel like, let's say that I can, in theory, still drive on the road in the US, like, at a pit stop, like a Starbucks or a Dunkin'. I'm probably not ordering anything fancy. I probably just want a regular coffee. I don't think I could forever abandon coffee just to keep matcha. So I'm going to say goodbye to matcha for that one. Okay, the next category is pop culture. And I'm going to caveat this question by saying I was asked a slightly different question about the Upper East Side versus Stars Hollow. And I decided to rewrite it because I was recently just thinking about these two characters. So my question for myself is, would you rather have Emily Gilmore as your mother or Eleanor Waldorf as your mother? So we're talking about Emily from Gilmore Girls and Eleanor from Gossip Girl, the two double G's. And they both have names that start with E. I don't even think that was planned. So here's why I was thinking about this. One of my other favorite podcasts, Gilmore to Say, just recently did an Emily Gilmore episode called What If Emily? And they kind of answered a bunch of different prompts, like, what if she did this? What if she did that? And I loved that episode. I can link it in the show notes. If you are a fan of Gilmore Girls too, you would definitely like their podcast. But I feel like these two women are actually very similar, but yet very different at the same time. I mean, clearly they both have money, they both have beautiful homes. They both are powerful women, but in two very different ways. Like, I think their kind of occupation and how they spend their days is what sets them apart the most, because Eleanor is clearly still a working woman and Emily is more like a head of household. And Emily is also in a solid relationship for most of Gilmore Girls. We'll give her that. And then Eleanor is dealing with a divorce and then ultimately meets Cyrus in Gossip Girl and remarries and everything. So like those are differences. And then when I look at how they both like treat their daughters, I think that there is usually just like a level of misunderstanding or miscommunication more than anything. I feel like they both kind of play their cards close to the vest. And even though they don't show it, that of course they care. They just express it in totally different ways. I have to say, though, I think that I would maybe rather be Eleanor Waldorf's daughter just because first of all, let's look at Blair. For like 1 or 2 seasons of Gossip Girl, she was living in that Upper East Side penthouse all by herself. Where were all the parents? Probably in France. Who knows, really? But I also thought it was cool how Eleanor had her own brand and had really worked her way up to where she ended up being in the world. And maybe she wasn't always the best mom. I mean, neither was Emily, I would say. But I feel like she is someone who would have continued to like push me and encourage me and inspire me. I mean, she even said to Blair in, I think, season 4, like, that she didn't necessarily have to follow in her footsteps with Eleanor Waldorf Designs. She was like, what about something else? Like, you're an arbiter of taste. That's what Dan said to her. Like, maybe she could be a magazine editor. Like, I think she cared a little bit less about exactly what she did and how she did it. There wasn't really a full predestined path for her, as long as it was something she was willing to work for and that she was genuinely passionate about. And I think even though she was a little absent from time to time, it's not because she didn't care. It's just because she was also busy. And I mean, as far as actually, you know what else is similar about these two? I can't believe I didn't start with this. We need to talk about the maids. Because if Eleanor were my mother and she were a little neglectful, I would still always have Dorota. Emily Gilmore's house, there's a new maid every week. Is that going to be, that might be what sways me here. I was not even thinking about that until right now. That's the beauty of answering these questions in real time. I'm going to be Eleanor Waldorf's daughter. I've just decided. Especially because I get to hang out with Dorota, who's also going to help me with stuff. But yeah, I thought that was actually, I feel like that one took me the longest to answer because that is a very interesting question. Two women who I've never really thought to compare before, but are strangely similar in many ways. However, for the record, I would not trade either of those women for my actual mom, who is truly the best person I know. Okay. Would you rather? So I thought this was, well, here, I'll just say it. Would you rather get front row seats to every Taylor Swift tour for life? I mean, do you need to hear the second part of this? Or get unlimited access to all of her vault songs before they're released? So when I saw this one, I sent it to Caitlin Patton and immediately she said tour. And I was also immediately thinking tour because I have some questions about the access to the vault songs because I actually think this is the weakest question it came up with, the ChatGPT of it all, because part of the joy of the vault songs is like getting to listen to them at the same time as everybody else. So if I have unlimited access to all of her vault songs, am I just like listening to them in a bunker in a dark room by myself? Can I tell anyone that I have them? I would also live in fear that someone would break into my house and like steal the USB or hack into my laptop and, you know, erase all the files or worse, like leak them to TMZ from my email address and then like Taylor Swift hates me. There's just a lot that I feel like could go wrong there. And I feel like it's not as much fun as like everyone getting to listen together and the internet reacting all at once, you know, the TikToks and texting your friends. And I feel like that's just part of the experience of these re-recordings. And also that would run out pretty quickly. I mean, as far as we know, there are only vault tracks for Debut and Reputation that have not been released yet. So that's only two more albums, both of which I predict will drop this year at some point. So that versus Taylor Swift front row seats to every tour for life. I mean, I think we're done with this one. I picked the tour. Okay, this is one that we kind of came up with together at book club because I also mentioned this question to them. Would you rather be able to read Taylor and Travis's texts or Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds' texts? What even is the answer to this? First of all, do we think these people text all that much? I mean, Blake and Ryan are obviously married. When I look at the text that I send to Andrew, it is always just like 3 sentences from me and a blue bubble and a reaction thumbs up from him. Like, no one should ever be interested in hacking our text messages because they're simply uninteresting. Yeah, so for example, today is Wednesday that I'm recording this. The last text that Andrew and I exchanged was last Thursday. He sent me a barcode and asked if I could get a package from our building. And then I texted him that I was coming back from the Catskills. I said, leaving now, might stop off at my parents' for a bathroom break. That got a thumbs up. So in my head, I'm like, the texts of a married couple are probably not that interesting. However, this is Blake and Ryan we're talking about, who are currently still in, I guess, a public image battle / also an actual legal battle because of It Ends With Us. Versus though Taylor and Travis, like since they don't live together full time, I feel as though they must text more. I mean, it's either the tea of the current situation that Blake and Ryan are in or the potential interesting exchange. Like, what do you think Taylor Swift is like as a texter? Does she text the way she writes? Does she use emojis? Does she have a favorite emoji? Does she abbreviate words? Does she say you like the letter U, or does she type it out? I'm sure she types it out. It's not, 2004. We have plenty of characters to work with. I'm tempted by the Blake and Ryan option, but I am going to pick Taylor and Travis. I just think it would be more interesting than might stop off at my parents for a bathroom break, to use myself as an example. Fun times. Okay, last question in the pop culture category. This was a good one. Would you rather go on The Traitors or The Amazing Race? Oh my God, don't make me choose between my two favorite things. Okay, both reality shows, obviously. And I didn't put any dating reality shows on here because, hello, clearly married. Although we can talk in an episode sometime about the time I auditioned for The Bachelor. I have to think about how I want to do that, but I will tell that story. Would I rather go on The Traitors or The Amazing Race? So, Amazing Race has been a dream of mine for a long time. And Andrew and I have been rewatching old seasons of The Amazing Race. I think we're currently up to season 17. So as of right now, in theory, I think I've seen pretty much every season from the beginning through 17. And then I have seen a few of the more recent seasons, including the one that they had to do during COVID where they like paused filming and then restarted the race back up again. So that is a dream of mine. I feel like I am extremely, extremely prepared to go into a situation like The Amazing Race, just like knowing what to look out for, being smart about things, dividing strengths and weaknesses. And it would be incredible to do that, obviously, with Andrew, who would be my teammate in an ideal world going into The Amazing Race. The Traitors is such a mind game. It looks like so much fun. I truly think I would enjoy myself on The Traitors, but my fear would be being there alone and also being there without the adequate media training and camera awareness that people who are reality stars already have on The Traitors. They did have quote unquote regular people in season 1 of The Traitors. So in theory, if they cast a season like that again, I guess I could go in, but I do feel like I would be at kind of a disadvantage not having the on-camera experience that the rest of the cast did. I mean, granted, it would still mean getting to meet potential reality stars who I would be obsessed with. But I think at the end of the day, Amazing Race, the seeds are planted too deep, so I can't turn my back on it. And the last category is fashion and beauty. This was an interesting batch of questions. Number 1, would you rather never have to do your hair again or never have to do your nails again? I think about this every time I need to do my nails for a situation. If I could just press pause, if you're watching me on YouTube right now, I'm holding up my nails. If I could just press pause right now and have these exact nails forever, I would be fine. They are like a baby pink right now. It is extremely clean, simple, basic. They look nice. If I never had to do my nails again, I would literally throw a party. It would be incredible. It's just so cumbersome. I don't mind doing my hair at all. And hair is something that I would very much want the capability to change up depending on the day and situation. I know it probably doesn't seem that way because my hair looks like this 98% of the time, just like down and wavy. But maybe if I didn't have to worry about my nails, I could spend a little more time on my hair. Literally, if I could just press pause right now and be like, these are my nails forever, and I understand I can't change my mind, like, where do I sign? That's my question. Okay. Would you rather do your makeup with only drugstore products or only high end products? This is a hard one for me, actually, because I love products both from the drugstore and obviously from the Sephoras of the world and Ulta, Blue Mercury, et cetera, et cetera. I wish they had asked Sephora or Ulta because then I would just choose Ulta, even though I do shop at Sephora more because Ulta has more of a mix of higher end brands that are also in Sephora as well as drugstore brands. That's not the question though. Would I rather do my makeup with only drugstore products or only high end products? And by the way, by high end products, I'm not even picturing like Chanel in my head. I'm more so picturing like Rare Beauty, Rhode, It Cosmetics, Tower 28, like the brands that are carried more so at Sephora versus the drugstore. This is hard because I do feel like there are more kind of like clean, better quality formulas at a Sephora compared to a drugstore, but the drugstore has improved a little, although the drugstore price points have gone up too. It's now it is a reality where you can walk into a drugstore and pay $20 for a foundation, and there would also be a $20 foundation option at Sephora in theory. So do the prices matter in the long run? It's hard to say. I like the idea of being able to do drugstore only makeup. Maybe I should do a YouTube video at some point with drugstore only makeup to update everyone on what my favorites are, especially because like this is a real thing that happened to me. So when we were going to my brother-in-law's wedding in Rhode Island a few years ago, I straight up just didn't pack any eyeshadow. So what do? I ran out to CVS, go directly to Wet n Wild. That is one of my favorite brands at the drugstore, especially for color cosmetics like eyeshadow. Pick up a little palette, get myself an extra eyeliner, like less than $20 later, and I'm at the door. I don't want to limit myself from that, especially because there are actually so many great drugstore products. I feel like I also try to share affordable and accessible picks with my audience when I can. I know that a lot of the products that I receive, in PR, where I don't have to pay for them, are products that would I actually spend my own money on? Some of them, yes, and some of them, maybe not. So I feel like the drugstore is the more realistic option. And there are clean at the drugstore products. There are products with good formulas there. So I think I could get away with it. It might even be kind of like a fun challenge to explain to people that I'm doing the drugstore only thing for a little while. I guess I say that now and I'm immediately regretting it. I'm like, what about my It Cosmetics? And what about? But I think I'm going to go with drugstore. I'll challenge myself a little bit here. It says makeup, by the way. So that doesn't mean that I have to get rid of my skincare. Haha, loophole. Okay, would you rather never be able to buy a new handbag again or never be able to buy new shoes again? I feel like I can't give up new shoes. That just seems impractical. And actually, and I've been thinking about this, maybe you guys have an opinion. I really want to buy myself a designer bag sometime in the next few years. And by the way, I have no style in mind. I have no designer in mind. I have no budget in mind. However, I feel like I would want to get it from the Real Real or Vestiaire Collective, not even just for the price of it all, but from what I'm reading about luxury these days, especially in Amy Odell's Substack, which is called Back Row. I will link that in the show notes too if you're interested in fashion and the luxury industry. It seems like the quality has also decreased as the price has increased. For me personally, I would rather pay for a bag that has been, what do they call it? Verified? Not verified. What do they call it? Approved? Inspected? Authenticated. Authenticated. Sorry, I had to Google. My brain wasn't working. As long as it's been authenticated and inspected, I would definitely rather buy something secondhand and better quality and also just give another life to a bag. Plus, I feel like it's so much more unique to buy styles that not everybody has right now. So, yeah, I could absolutely skirt around the new handbag thing because I don't think I can avoid getting new shoes just over time. The soles wear down, things break. Like, that's just not practical. So, yeah, no new handbags for me, just new shoes. Okay, very last question. I think I rewrote this one slightly because the original one was just like, okay. Would you rather only be able to use one fragrance for the rest of your life, or you can use a different fragrance every time you leave the house, but you won't know what it smells like until it's already on you? Fragrance is super personal, and I don't like around 90% of fragrances. So I would absolutely just commit to one fragrance for the rest of my life. And to be honest, I would probably choose my wedding fragrance, which is the Maison Margiela On a Date Eau de Parfum. I absolutely love that scent. Obviously, now that I've worn it on my wedding day, it will always carry like special memories for me. And I think I would be happy with just that. Plus, who doesn't love having a signature scent? Plus, perfume is expensive, so that's one less thing that I would have to buy. Although, to be honest, I have also been gifted many fragrances, which I am very grateful for. All right, you guys. Well, thanks so much for this. Did not even feel like work whatsoever. That's one of my favorite things about this job, for playing a little Would You Rather with me. Please let me know if you have any Would You Rather questions you would want me to answer in a future episode. I can certainly do another one like this, or if there are other games you want me to play. I also really enjoyed doing my Taylor Swift album rankings episode and my Dream Eras Tour set list. So if there's anything in that world that you think would make a fun episode, definitely reach out. I would really love to hear from you. And thank you again so much for listening. As a reminder, you can support Create and Consume for free by doing any of the following. You can leave us Apple and Spotify ratings and reviews. You can like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell if you're watching this episode on YouTube. You can follow along at Create and Consume Pod on Instagram and TikTok. You could send this episode to a friend who might enjoy it. And as always, don't forget to check out createandconsumepodcast.com for episode recaps and more. Thanks again for listening, and I'll talk to you soon.